Good afternoon and welcome everybody. This is our inaugural session. Welcome to Commence Your Career, or as you might know us on Instagram if you follow us, Are You Workforce Ready? And we're glad you joined us here to take this first pivotal step toward your enlightened and maximized career. So what we're here to do, I'll explain a little bit about the premise of today's course, our overall framework of the 10 courses you're going to get introduced to in our bi-monthly online recordings, a little bit broader on what we can do on an individual basis for you. And then we're going to jump into our first topic today. So this is what we're going to accomplish in the next about 24 minutes from now. That's what we're set out to do today. So first off, welcome. Welcome, as you can see, to the real world. These are real world courses taught by real world professionals. And as such, you're going to be treated as if you are in a business setting and kind of bridging that gap between how you learned in your college days and how you're going to learn in the professional world. So it's not just the topics, it's also the style. And then we're going to fuse in some productivity tips to make sure that you're maximizing your recall, your retention, and your comprehension of today's materials in our future sessions. So I first want to just take a quick minute to talk about the premise of why we exist, Commence, if you will. So it's an industry that basically doesn't exist today. You have your colleges and your traditional education, and then you have your corporations and your professional workforce elements, but there's really nothing in that middle to help you navigate this pivotal step of moving from your college life into your career. So that chasm that exists today, we're here to close that. And we believe there's a big gap between what you learn in college, a lot of the principles and maybe some foundations, but really just the how to think, getting the mindset straight for you to have a successful career. So you get a mindset in college. And then in the corporations who have been traditionally left to help you develop yourself have really focused on maximizing the value they get from you. So instead of developing you, they are extracting from you. And they're using their product sets to drive the vehicles toward their own growth as opposed to developing you. So what we mean by that is corporations are extracting maximal value from you and using their product sets to do so. So corporations' product sets, college's mindset. What's missing? Your skill set. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you develop your skill set. And we're going to be doing that. We're going to be focusing on soft skills. Why are we focusing on soft skills? Hard skills are very important. There's a lot of great courses already out there today that we would rather recommend you to take there rather than come to us. That's not an area of my expertise. You don't want to be learning Excel, pivot tables, and lookup tools from me. I would suggest you go to courses on Coursera or Khan Academy. Plenty of great resources out there to help you with your hard skills. And hard skills are very important. Hard skills, I will say, set a very solid foundation, a good floor for you as you look into your professional endeavors and begin your career. And setting a high floor is a great thing. I think as an American culture, we're a little too focused on setting that good floor. We're not really focused on maximizing our skill set. So setting a floor is important. Those are hard skills. What we're going to teach you to do is maximize your potential within soft skills. And soft skills, see that ceiling up there? We're going to break through that ceiling. Soft skills are what break the ceiling of what you can accomplish. So maybe you thought you were only going to be a manager or a director in your life, but what's to keep you from being a CEO? What's to keep you from being a very successful entrepreneur shaking up an entire industry? Those are the soft skills. That's what's keeping you from doing that. That's what's keeping you from unlimiting your potential and your power and your career. So we're going to talk about how to break through the ceiling, unlimit yourself to accomplish great things in life. So I know it's all very aspiring and very inspiring, but let's talk about how to make that a reality. So the 10 courses we're going to take you through, we'll get a brief intro of them today. But we're going to start with probably the one that you're most focused on today, especially during COVID, and that is networking. Networking is vital right now as you try to figure out ways to navigate on social, especially LinkedIn and other channels during the quarantine life here of how to connect with people. So we're going to talk about not only the social elements, but then once we do return to the normal world, how to maximize your career fairs, your parties that you go to, or other business settings that you could be meeting top executives and people to help you spur along your career. So that's where we're going to start today. And before we do that, I just want to give you an overview of the 10 courses that we have. So I'm going to share my screen here on the 10 courses that we teach. So as you see here, we're going to start with networking. Networking is extremely important because it's 80% of jobs. I've seen as low as 70, as high as 85 from various reports, Glassdoor, Business Insider, you name it, that jobs aren't even listed on websites. They are sourced through networking. So how do you develop this networking opportunity to not tap into the 20 or 15% of jobs that are out there, but the broader whole of 100% of jobs that are out there, or as close to 100% as possible. So we're going to talk about networking there. And then business writing. So a lot of people think, oh, whatever, you know, I've learned how to write in college. I'm not going to need to know how to business write. It's a very different fundamental shift between what you learn in college, how to write, and what you're going to need to do in the business world. Just how short it is, how pithy it is, how direct it is. It's mixing that line, that we'll get into this in the course, but mixing that line between conversational and creative and polite and poised. So how do you do that? And how do you reduce that number of 7 tries to break through to somebody to make sure your messages are most effective immediately? Interview skills. So 250 people are applying for the same job that you just applied for online. Let's take a moment to let that sink in. 250 people. Now, what are you doing to stand out among 250 people during your interview process and staging to get the job? Hopefully you can get it through networking, but for the situations where that may not apply, we're going to make sure to teach you how to interview correctly. Presentation skills. 8 seconds is the average attention span. Do you know what 8 seconds is the average attention span of humans, but not only humans? One other animal. I guess I should really say mammal. Goldfish. So a goldfish also has an 8-second attention span. That's it's a little bit disconcerting to think that we are on the same level of goldfish, which are historically known as having short attention spans. And what are you doing to make sure that you are capturing someone's attention in that first 8-10 seconds to make sure that they're going to want to listen? You hook them in, they want to listen to the rest of your presentation. So we're going to talk about the different battles of getting someone's attention and keeping it. Storytelling. This is a powerful statistic pointing out how statistics actually aren't that powerful. So let's take a moment to let that sink in, the catch-22 of that statistic, but showing that stories are sticking about 12 times more in people's memories than statistics when you are sharing a presentation or just sharing a story. So if you want to craft compelling messages, you have to master the art of storytelling. We'll get into that. Persuasion. Kind of an easy statistic, but every day we are always trying to persuade someone to get them to understand what we're looking for them to accomplish or get them on the same playing field. So Daniel Pink talks about this at length in his book, To Sell is Human. And he talks about how about 80% of jobs out there have some daily component of persuasion or negotiation, or generally bringing someone from point A that they share to point B what you share, and closing that gap to at least come to some sort of compromise or understanding of each other. So we're going to talk about persuasion abilities. Closely tied to persuasion is negotiation. So what are you doing to set yourself up for the proper foundations and frameworks to be able to be an effective negotiator? Because this statistic, 12.3 negotiations, is actually extremely outdated. The reason why is it's measured the lifetime of the boomer generation of how their career has gone, and they had to negotiate 12.3 times. That's how many times they were changing jobs. And that was far fewer than what we do today as millennials and Gen Zs, or even Gen Xs. So this number is going to go through the roof, which is why I put that plus sign there. So having that proper foundation today is going to be vital for your career. And it's going to more than pay for this course in infinitum of just over and over again. You could pay for this course in perpetuity just by 1 or 2 negotiations. I actually was able to help my girlfriend with one of her job negotiations, and tremendous result for her. So we'll talk a little bit more about the properties and foundations of negotiation to keep in mind. Financial savvy, I broke this out into 2 parts, finance and then also healthcare. So it's scary numbers. 76% of people, of millennials are financially illiterate, and then 88% of America as a whole is healthcare illiterate. And now we use these words illiterate, and we draw up these images of people not being smart or able to grasp anything. You're like, well, that's clearly not me. But there are basic fundamentals that people don't consider, and it's to no fault of their own. But we're going to talk about things like HSAs, which are health savings accounts. We're going to talk about things like Roth IRAs, which are investment vehicles for you for your retirement. So I'll write some of these down to make sure that you look into them. And those are 2 really good foundational starting points. HSAs and Roth IRAs, especially as you're young. Compounded interest and tax advantaged vehicles like these are critical for you to learn from. So we'll talk more about those 2 and a plethora of others and the tax implications there, where to live and what to do with your life. Research tools, they're expensive. LinkedIn is a tool that I get the benefit of utilizing in my day-to-day job, and Tim does as well, and many others, but they're expensive. It's not something you want to just dive right into. So we're going to tell you a little bit more about how to extract value from research tools and which ones might be appropriate for you. And then last but not least is emotional intelligence. Now, this may come as like, well, how could you really teach emotional intelligence? It's kind of a strange one to ponder for a second, but once you let that sink in, what we're really talking about here is how to build trust with someone, how to develop a relationship, and utilizing principles of likability. So you'll see a number of different sources quoted from us in emotional intelligence, whether that's someone like an Amy Cuddy, who's a Harvard business professor, teaches about presence, whether that's someone like, the perfect example is Dale Carnegie and his How to Win Friends and Influence People. We'll talk about those principles, as well as the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in Stephen Covey's book that you may have seen me put out on Instagram, the review of. So you'll see these books in emotional intelligence and throughout our course being intermingled throughout it all. So you're getting not only our anecdotal and statistical and our background from our lives, but also the broader 125, 150 experts that we're going to be citing throughout the course for you to feel confident in what you're doing. So those are the 10 courses, and they're all going to be wrapped around fundamental productivity concepts. One of the things that I really don't like about our day and age is we are not consistent. People, oh, this is what you need to be productive, and then courses are not taught in line with how to be productive whatsoever. So we're going to shake that up with concepts like active recall, the loci method, building yourself a story, and all those different principles on how to memorize something or how to increase your comprehension of something. We're going to build on those tools. And you're going to hear me citing Jim Quick a lot. So someone I'd recommend checking into in his book, Limitless. You'll see me reference that one a lot. But we're going to be utilizing a lot of his principles as well as others on productivity. And one of the techniques we're going to be talking about for every single one of these sessions, every single one of these sessions is going to be 25 minutes. Now, if we are on a topic that's going to go over 25 minutes, we will stop and take a 3 to 5 minute break. And this is all in adherence to the Pomodoro technique. Figured I'd write it down since it's a word that not many people are used to hearing, unless you are Italian, of course, which is the Italian word for tomato. But the Pomodoro technique basically says what I just told you now is work for 25 minutes as our brain remembers best in that time frame for, I guess you could say, complex thinking tasks or tasks that require a lot of our attention, a lot of our higher brain waves. So 25 minutes on and then 3 to 5 minutes off. So that's how this course will be taught. With that in mind, I'm going to jump from this course and into our first topic of networking. And while I do that, to make sure I'm practicing what I preach here on productivity, as I switch over, I'm gonna grab a drink of water. I suggest you guys do the same. Keep your brain oxygenated so you can create those new neural pathways to maximize your learning. Sit up straight. Not only does it help with confidence, but posture in general keeps your brain well oxygenated and flowing properly. If you have a minute, what I suggest is just doing some jumping jacks, maybe some high knees, jump rope, something to get yourself flowing. It's something that Jim Quick, as I will say now and many other times, talks about frequently, is as your body moves, your brain grooves. So you'll hear that concept many times from Jim Quick and myself on the importance of exercise. So I'll give you a couple more minutes to wrap up. Sit up straight, get your water, get your exercise flowing, and we'll jump in a little bit here to interview skills and networking in general. All right, great. Hopefully you got a few jumping jacks in. So networking, our first session is going to be pretty general. We're going to talk about how the importance of being targeted and the importance of giving first in order to get something later. So be targeted. The riches are in the niches. So what this really means is the fact that you can't just go out there with a broad effort, broad stroke community of, oh, I found someone and they loosely tie with what I did or, you know, who I am, so I'm going to reach out to them. Saying, oh, someone's in financial services and I want to be a, you know, bank, I want to be in investment banking, I'm going to reach out to them. That's not going to get you really anywhere. So think about your targeted approach in your value proposition and tie the two, marry the two together. So what are you going to do? Maybe you were a part of some kind of group or club or sports team and you look for people that were in those similar channels. Maybe you start there. Maybe you go geographically. Maybe you're from a very interesting, tight-knit community that when other people are from there and they leave, they still want to help back out. So do you have a tight-knit community as well? So look into those and think about those networks that you might already have and focus on those. It's better to have 2 or 3 good shots than 100 firing at the hip shots. So focus on them, give value first. I know people are probably thinking, and it's a topic we talked about in one of our seminars so far, but it's the concept of, I'm in college, what kind of value do I have to give? And I think that people are so focused on, I'm young, I can't give any value, but in reality, so many people are focused on learning about Gen Zs that you're actually offering them an opportunity to learn about you and learn about your environments so they can help target their message as a company or as a person to Gen Zs. So you offer that viewpoint and don't underestimate that. In addition to that viewpoint, you can be a personal advocate of theirs. You can be a brand advocate of theirs. You can be helping their company in some different regard. You could be helping their social media presence. So there are a lot of things you can give back. So take that into consideration and think about all the benefits you may have as a college student, as a Gen Z community member, if you will. So think about that. And then know, like, trust is the general process of how someone gets to know you. Mere exposure effect of someone knowing you about doubles your ability to persuade them and your ability to get to know them, get them to like you. So they know you first, then they like you, and then they'll eventually trust you. So we'll talk about how to lay the proper foundations at each stage. So one of the sessions we did was on college students and their transactional help me approach. And it's something that doesn't garner much goodwill and much attention. So what we're trying to set out to do is, in your first initial message, how are you crafting to take a long-term approach, 1, to be thoughtful and specific in your outreach and your follow-ups, 2, and then 3rd, what can you give back either now in the first message or later on in your additional messages it's going to be of value. So those 3 fundamental concepts are things that you should really be focused on. So in your initial outreach, how can you take a long-term approach? You could ask them for their opinion, their advice, seek it as kind of like almost an interview. You're interviewing them, you're getting some tutelage from them, about the industry as a whole, and you don't have some kind of hook of you're looking for an internship or you're looking for a job. Don't include that because it's not authentic. So if you can have 2 to 3 authentic touch points before any type of conversation comes up about, even if it's centered on what you can do for them, but just something about partnering together, that's really going to benefit you because college students are not taking that approach today. In your follow-up, say you do get granted the opportunity to speak to them, be thoughtful and specific. What does this mean? Don't just consider the generic message of thanks for taking the time today, look forward to speaking with you soon, have a great weekend. Because that's not going to get you anywhere. Think about the 1, 2, 3 things they might have shared with you on a personal level. Take note of that, or maybe mention your connection to them in that message. And then in your follow-up about, hey, you told me to do X and Y, I just did X, Y, and Z, am I hitting the mark here? What would you recommend I look into? And can we schedule more time in the next couple weeks for me to learn more from you? And, really just take that approach that you're a sponge and you're trying to absorb everything they have to offer you. So when you approach from that lens, you'll be very helpful because people want to mentor people that are proactive and want to better themselves. Reciprocity, what can you give back? I talked about it already. Figure out those ways that you can give back as a brand advocate, as maybe someone who represents an opinion for them or can be a member of the local community to help them. So think about what can you give back. So I'm going to end on this slide today as we approach 25 minutes here of what questions to ask yourself. And you should always approach from their lens. You might have heard this on Instagram, we talk about this, but in your messages, think about from their perspective, why should they care, what's in it for them, and why you are particularly valuable. The fourth one I'll add is why now, why they should talk to you now. So if you're approaching from their lens, it's why should I care? What's in it for me? Why you? And why now? So think about those questions when you're crafting your messages, and that'll do you a world of good. And one of these concepts is it's not just networking, there's pyramid hopping. Pyramid hopping is more of the A to B to get to C approach rather than the A to C approach. What I mean by that is networking we're all familiar with of, hey, John is the one I need to get in touch with about this job. So I'm going to get to know John and reach out directly to John. However, you may be very well connected either through family or friends or your community to Mary. And maybe Mary really knows John very well. So how do you develop Mary as what Malcolm Gladwell would say as a social connector? How do you get to leverage her to get to your end goal of who you want to network with? So develop your networks and also develop your opportunities for developing your pyramid, if you will. So consider that as well. And then don't underestimate the power of first impressions. A lot of people don't give a second chance. So consider that and consider how you're going to maximize your first impression by smiling, taking their time into consideration, thanking them, being appreciative, and following up. I think if you do those things, you'll be off to a great start. So we're right at about 25 minutes right now, so we're going to end there today. Thank you for joining this first session. And in the spirit of productivity and memorization and retention, I want you to take a minute to recall what I wrote on the board and to look at your notes, flip them over, write down what you remembered, and then flip them back over and compare. So compare what you took down initially and what you thought you knew, and then compare what you wrote down. See where the gap is today, and we'll keep working on that gap to make sure that you're getting the maximal retention and comprehension. Thanks, everybody. Hope the session was helpful for you. Looking forward to our next one together. Take care.